The Texas massacre marked the deadliest school shooting in a decade since Sandy Hook, the 30th school shooting at a K-12 elementary school this year. And this morning, many insist more could have been done to stop this tragedy. Joining us now to tell us what more could have been done and should have been done is retired LAPD Sergeant Cheryl Dorsey. Sergeant, good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning.
Here we are again, 19 kids this time, 2 teachers slaughtered by an 18-year-old with an assault rifle. There seems that protocols were breached, school doors were not locked, law enforcement did not aggressively engage the gunman who was able to barricade himself in a 4th grade classroom for 40 to 60 minutes when gunfire rang out. What does that tell you?
Well, it tells me that we have a problem. And listen, be clear, when we talk about police departments, a lot of people believe and assume that we're talking about large agencies like LAPD. This was a small department. I've heard that there were like 6 officers, and that included the chief of police and a couple of detectives. And so clearly, if training was standardized and everyone received the same amount of training and the same type of training, we wouldn't have these issues. We have press relations officers over there who don't seem to know what's going on. The right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing, and there's no real coordination. And so while that's a problem, let's not pretend that the bigger issue isn't the ability of those who should not have assault type weapons in their possession, having them. And so that's what we need to address. This has been ongoing since 2012, and the Republicans have no appetite to do anything to stop this. They're so tone deaf that today they're appearing at an NRA convention. And while Greg Abbott wants to have his cake and eat it too, he's not showing up, but he's going there virtually with a pre-recorded, video recorded message. And so even in the midst of this, there doesn't seem to be an appetite for them to do anything other than stall and block legislation that would truly put an end to these unnecessary mass shootings on our school campuses.
So, Sergeant, in terms of law enforcement, I mean, the scene was just horrific, with parents worried, desperate for their children's safety, begging police officers when the shooting was ongoing, saying, "We'll push through those yellow lines," because they were so angry and outraged and scared about the law enforcement's failure to respond. Some of them were pepper sprayed and handcuffed. The question is, you know, law enforcement apparently or reportedly said they were afraid to be shot at, and that's why they didn't engage further or follow the gunman into the school. If that is the case, should law enforcement be held accountable in this tragedy?
Well, listen, some of this stuff is inherent to what we do. And if that frightens you, then this is the wrong occupation for you. Training is an issue. That spokesperson is problematic because he's saying things that are inflammatory and insulting to the parents of these 19 beautiful babies. So while training is an issue, training is perishable, clearly there was more that could have been done. When you have a barricaded suspect situation, which is what these officers were facing, you want to send in a tactical unit. If they didn't have access to one and they had to request one from a neighboring agency, that would take time. But there are diversionary tactics that officers should be training and should be familiar with in the event that you don't have the time to wait for a SWAT unit to get on hand, set up and negotiate with someone. I understand why these families are so outraged to hear gunfire as you're outside of a classroom knowing your child is in there and the police are seemingly standing around doing nothing other than figuring out ways to articulate why they aren't going in.
Oh, yes. Okay, so help us with this. What is the protocol for these shootings? We learned from Columbine that you go and get that shooter as fast as you can before they enter the classroom where they can inflict mass casualties. Talk to us about the protocol.
Well, absolutely. You want to engage an armed suspect whenever you encounter one. But again, when they become barricaded, that changes the whole trajectory of how you're going to deal tactically with the situation. And we play like we practice. If you don't know what to do, then you do what these officers did. Nothing. And so they understand that civil liability is coming. The school certainly has a role to play. They allowed doors to be open and accessible that should not have been. And so I think going forward, we all need to, first of all, have a conversation with our little people so they know what they can do as best they can to protect themselves. But the other thing that we need to do is be ready as a community to be inconvenienced, to be bothered by locked doors, to have to take a little bit longer to get your children in and out of school because you want to make sure they're safe once you deposit them into that facility.
Right. When we talk about gun laws, Sergeant, we have some of the most restrictive here in California and the entire nation. However, we have the most mass shootings than any other state. So what does that tell you?
That we haven't done enough to deter the the behavior that leads to those mass shootings, that we've made it too easy for folks to go out and buy weapons. I mean, listen, I understand that there are policies and protocols into place, and there's certain things that would not prohibit someone from possessing a weapon. Folks don't want to give up their air quotes Second Amendment rights, but I think there could be some things put into place that may stall someone from getting a weapon, like this person who isn't involved in criminality, isn't insane, clearly, but his family knew he had issues. I mean, he didn't wake up that morning and decide to shoot his grandmother in the face. There was something going on over there in that family for a long time, and they knew it, but they didn't report it or wouldn't report it because they didn't think anything could be done. And so let's stall these background investigations. Let's create a list for those that don't quite make criminal or insanity prohibitions, but give investigators a reason to maybe look at this person a little bit differently, ask them some questions, wonder why it is that they're doing what they're doing in the moment, and then only give that weapon to them when it's as close as you can get to reasonably making sense. Do it then.
Well, your vital voice is so searing this morning. Retired LAPD Sergeant and author Cheryl Dorsey, thank you for joining us this morning. I wish it were under better circumstances. We will hopefully take your words to heart. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
And as we head out to break, here's a view from Mulholland's scenic overlook. We'll be right back, everyone. It is Friday. The weekend is here. Memorial Day. Make it a good one.